right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Gui Costin, who is over in lovely Philadelphia on the East Coast. How are you doing, Guy?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. He's the founder and CEO of Dakota, a financial software data and media company based in Philadelphia. Your flagship product, Dakota Marketplace, is a database of institutional investors used by over 6,000 fundraisers, many of the leading global investment firms. And what we're going to talk about today is success in sales. And tell me, Guy, just to sort of set the stage here, what do you think has changed about sales, over the last, say 5 to 10 years? What are some of the things have changed and what are some of the things that have stayed the same?
I think what we do is we do cold outreach
Hmm.
into our potential investors, and I think that what's changed clearly there's a lot more technology available. LinkedIn is huge on being able to source different ideas for sales and reaching out to people. So there's a lot of different technologies, obviously with Outreach, SalesLoft, Clay. There's all these different technologies that have made a lot of these processes a little bit easier. But what has not changed at all is the emotional connection to doing cold outreach to book meetings with, I call them qualified buyers, but people that you don't know, but you do know that they, in our case, invest in your type of investment strategy, and you just don't know them yet. So you have to do cold outreach.
Yeah, a lot of people nowadays struggle with that whole cold outreach and cold calling and all of that, and sort of, and especially because they were spoiled or maybe misled a little bit, over previous years when everything was suddenly inbound, and salespeople got this idea that all these activities, by marketing and stuff, would just drive loads of leads coming in. So there is a certain, I mean, there just seems to be a certain reticence towards cold outreach, and obviously that's still a critical component of driving business. So what do you say to those people who maybe have a little reticence towards cold outreach?
Well, I mean, it's good news. It's good news for people that do it, right? Right, and right. So what I would say is this: I would say it's very simple. If you don't do cold outreach, okay, you basically have to accept your fate, right? Is that you're a professional meeting setter upper, especially in our business. The quicker you get that concept and the quicker you commit to it and or submit to it, the better off you're going to be. And it's only emotional, and people feel sorry for themselves. People don't get back to them, and they feel sorry for themselves. So it's not like somebody sticking a knife in your leg. It's just you. It doesn't make you feel good because people aren't getting back to you. So you just have to get over that, because the fact of the matter is, once they meet you, they're going to like you face to face. But your goal is to use cold outreach just to book meetings, not make a sale, just to book a meeting. And you have to be very thoughtful about the emails that you write and construct.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point. And I think, as you said, they're being careful and intentional how you do the outreach, because I also see, nowadays people, as you said, we can leverage technology. There's lots of ways we can do things, but a lot of thoughtlessness, I think, has crept into it, where people think they can just throw anything out there, and technology will enable it. But I mean, they're not paying attention to exactly what they're saying, how they're doing it, how they're coming across.
Yeah, completely. You have to be completely intentional. In my book, The Dakota Way, I break down the email. So, because you're sending emails to book meetings face to
Mhm.
face, and in the subject line, it has to say meeting request, date and time. Then you have one sentence, maybe two max, that really packs the punch of who you are, what you do, and why they would want to take a meeting with you. And then you have to have a clear call to action to close out the email, which is, can you meet May 4th at 3 p.m. question mark.
Hmm. Yeah, and which is, and again, I mean, because a lot of the stuff you get is just seems to be very vague, or whatever, and it's not, or overloaded, or maybe trying to do too many things at once, or maybe even just badly put together. Like even with AI tools today, I still see emails that are badly put together.
Yes. I mean, you have to be so thoughtful about the email that you create. I mean, that's really critical. and giving it the level of thought that I just went through. Those meeting request emails really work, but you have to be very thoughtful about the body of the email because it can only be 1 to 2 sentences because people will not read. They won't go down the paragraph. So be intentional.
Yeah. Another thing I hear a lot about today is, people say that, okay, nobody picks up their phone anymore, nobody returns calls anymore. What's your advice to people on how to do outreach by phone and especially like voicemails that get callbacks?
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother sort of kettle of fish, if you will. And it's not the end of the world if you don't do it. Cold email is how people are used to be communicating with. The tough part is people are not in the office as much as they were.
Yeah.
And so that means you're cold calling them on their cell phone and you have to be very delicate. And I think the first thing you have to do is if you cold call somebody on the phone and I get you, I say, hey, John, Gui Costin, we've never spoken before. But I'm reaching out because I'm going to be in Boston or San Diego on this date. And this is what we do. And I'd love the opportunity to combine and introduce myself.
Yeah. And what you've just done there is something like, as you said, I
Thanks.
mean, it's something like that's nice, non-threatening, like careful, if you like, elegant, an elegant approach.
Yeah. And it really does work. Because if you got a phone call like that and someone was very clear, hey, John, it's Guy. We've never spoken before. This is who I am. This is what I do. I'm going to be, and I'm calling I'd love to be able to stop by when I'm in San Diego in 2 weeks on, May 28th. Could you meet at 10 a.m.?
Mhm.
And it's like, and then the person, right, they're like, okay, no, I'm not interested in your product, but hey, I appreciate you reaching out. Thanks. And you have to sound extremely professional and you have to make sure you have a good connection and it comes through clearly.
Yeah, a couple of things there. I mean, one of the things I like, the fact that you say, we've never spoken before because oftentimes you get those calls, and if you do answer them, somebody just launches into they're so it almost comes across like they're so surprised that somebody picked up the phone that they just launch into this kind of stream of consciousness as opposed to like very direct and to the point. And I like that idea of saying, like we've never spoken before. And the other thing you mentioned there is being very, very professional. And I think that's another place, Key, where people can differentiate themselves very easily today because we've allowed, or people have allowed, a lot of kind of casual communication, casual way of approaching, casual way of speaking. And I don't know you. When I first connect with you, I don't know you. I don't know whether that's something you react well to or not to. Therefore, I always say to people, you'll never get dinged by being too professional, too polite, and too intentional in what you do.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. The whole being professional, looking the part, dressing the part, making sure that you are really well rehearsed on your product and how you position that product. And then also the thing that's really critical in sales is you have to ahead of time anticipate just about every question that your prospect's going to ask about you, your company, and your product.
Mhm.
And then you need to tell them exactly what they want to hear. And I think where people fall down is they don't think ahead enough of what they're going to be asked, then how they can then answer that question and tell the person exactly what they want to hear.
Yeah, and I think some of that comes down to the fact that some salespeople don't do enough prep work for calls, and this can even be, this is not even rookie people. This can be people who've been doing it for so long that they think, oh, I can wing this or whatever. Because it's always an interesting thing, Guy, to look at a salesperson's calendar and you see, meetings and appointments, and then you go, okay, show me where's the prep time set aside for that call.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you won't see that.
Yeah, and I think that I mean our number one salesman on the investment sales side takes incredible notes before a meeting, so he knows exactly what he's covering. And I think you also need to go into a meeting and make sure you're prepared to ask questions up front, just to get a level set on where you stand and how then you should be positioning
Mhm.
your product, your strategy, whatever it might be. So I think people dive in too quickly
Mhm.
before asking questions and then by getting those answers, then you know how to direct your answers and your comments.
Yeah. And obviously the other part too, which I think people are losing the ability to listen properly because, we live in such a distracted world, where people have convinced themselves that they can multitask.
Right.
And then when they do go in and ask good questions, they don't listen enough to actively listen enough to the answers and maybe build upon it and validate and really make sure that they're understanding what the prospect is saying.
Yeah, no question. That's the whole one of the whole goals is making sure, and then you have to think through ahead of time the exact questions that you want to be asking and that you want answers to, so then you can direct your comments appropriately.
Yeah. And then the other part of prepping for a call is obviously you have an outcome in mind, but you're not always going to get the exact outcome you want. So I often find sometimes people go in with one outcome in mind, don't have a backup, and if that outcome doesn't materialize, they're kind of lost. So again, as part of preparation, you need to have like a desired outcome, but you need to have some other backup ones in case you don't get the one you're looking for.
No doubt, no doubt, and I think it's just appropriate to have a yellow pad of paper with those questions as gentle reminders for yourself, and you should always be taking notes in meetings as well.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. What are some of the other what are some of the other changes you've seen around sales, or what have you seen your best salespeople? What did they do that other people that you've seen that other people don't do?
They ask the tough questions, right? They essentially ask for the order. They ask in the meeting after they've said everything, "Hey, is there an opportunity for us to work together? And if there is, what do we need to do? What do you believe are the next steps?" So I think people, it's not so much asking for the order like you see in the movies, but
Right.
it's just asking, right? It's just asking the uncomfortable question of, "Hey, this has been great. And do you see our product, our strategy fitting either within your tech stack or within your asset allocation models? Is this something that you see fitting or not?" And then based on how they answer, you say, okay, what would be the logical next step? So I think asking those uncomfortable questions is really important. Asking for the order, that's what people, it's really asking the uncomfortable question where you're going to get a yes or a no, right? They're going to say, hey, this is now, I don't see a fit, or I do, these are the next steps. People get really scared to ask those questions.
Yeah, I think people are afraid sometimes to ask those questions. They feel like too early, or maybe sometimes they just don't want to ask that question because they don't want to get the they don't want to get the answer in case it's no this early, early in the process. And so I agree with you. That can be a tough thing to do.
Yep, and you just have to start, and the more you ask, the easier it gets because you overcome the fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an interesting point as well, Guy, just to focus on for a moment, and that is the attitude of the salesperson. Either you go in as a business professional, as a business equal, you see yourself on that foot, you have confidence in yourself and what you bring to the table, or as I often see, people go in from a position of almost like apologetic of starting kind of down here and having the prospect up here. And so it's not a conversation between equals.
Yes, exactly. And I think the more you can make the sales calls a conversation where you're going back and forth, you're asking questions, giving answers, asking questions, it's where it becomes a real conversation. That's the place that you want to get to because you really want to unearth your prospects' problems, like really what they're suffering for, and then what utopia might look like. And do you have the solution to fix their most vexing problems?
Mhm. And as well, I always think it too is like being, having that curiosity too, as a salesperson. I think that's one of the things that prospects really relate to is when you have a real kind of infectious curiosity. You really want to know about their business. You have done some research into the business they're in. You understand the business of business. But I think all of those things, help the prospect think, okay, I'm dealing with somebody who can bring me some value even beyond the product or service offering.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. That makes complete sense. And people definitely need to be doing more of that.
Yeah, yeah. And so with your Dakota way, I mean, what do you think is what are the most important elements in that approach?
So there's if you think about life, right, with all the social media and all the noise out there, right? There's two categories, right? There's things you can control
Mm-hmm.
and there's things you can't control. People spend a lot of time focusing and doing things around what they can't control. However, if you break down in a sales process what you can control, and that's what our book's about, there's 4 core principles, and then there's 3 sub principles from an execution perspective underneath each one. And what we see where people fall down is, number one, they don't set the proper expectations with their boss on what success looks like.
Mm.
And then they don't have a mandatory reporting process where they're going to report progress against their plan back to their boss. So that's number one, right? That's huge fall down, and you cripple yourself because they don't want to be exposed. They don't want to be transparent. And they end up basically getting fired, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not reporting to the boss progress against your plan of what you said you were going to do, they think really weird thoughts like you're not doing your job. And it also puts you in a straitjacket where it's a forcing mechanism where you're forced to show up to the pipeline reviews each week with something on the paper, right? But if you only have to show up once a month or once every 2 months, you can get very lazy very quickly, and you don't want to do that to yourself. So that's number one. The second area that people really fall down is they do not define clearly their targeted buyer.
Yeah.
Right. So what you want to be able to do is build a list of targeted buyers. I call them, put rocks in a bucket. Okay. Those are your qualified buyers. And then you need the plan, which is all the stuff you can control. Then you need a plan for how you're going to attack that. We do it through city scheduling, the cold email that I mentioned, city scheduling. And then 3, you can control what you say in a meeting. You have total control over your words. But as we just spoke about previously, people aren't preparing in the way that they should be.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not thinking through exactly what the prospect wants to hear. And they have not choreographed. And that's what the book talks about. We literally choreograph the meeting for you. And 4th, another thing that you can control is you can control the tech stack. So the CRM that you use and the meetings that you get in, you can have total control over that. And if you get the meetings that you've scheduled in your pipeline, you can run past activity reports to see who you've met with, which will trigger sales actions because time flies. You're doing a lot. It's hard to remember everything. And then lastly, you also can control your opportunity report, which is how you go back to point number 1 of showing progress against your plan. All those things that I just went through, and then it's a loop, right? You just keep looping. But those are all things that are completely within one salesperson's control. And that's where you produce the greatest outcomes. If you hyper-focus on those 4 areas, there's no way, unless your product is horrible, that you will not have success.
Yeah. And it's funny the first one, you said there about the expectations and all of that. I always say to people that that is one of the greatest skills you can develop is managing upwards, right? It's not managing, people will talk about managing teams. I say no, managing upwards is one of the best skills you can have. And as you said, setting the expectations, setting the cadence, the reporting, all of that, making sure that you are predictable and that to your manager, that you're not somebody who's full of surprises or who needs to be chased up. And I think that's such an important thing that you outlined there, is that setting proper expectations.
Yeah, and if you do it properly and you're meeting and you're saying stuff to your boss and updating, and your boss is not comfortable with what you're saying, then you're going to pivot and learn.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not being transparent against what you said you were going to do, you're not getting feedback. And also the thing that I try to remind everybody, okay, is that if you sit down with your boss, and it could be a client or your boss, and you inform them of how your progress against your plan, it's not just going inside their brain and leaving, right? If you position yourself properly and sell yourself properly of all the great things that you're doing, the boss is going to go tell all the other executives, their partners, everybody, right? So they are literally the grapevine for you. They are your mouthpiece, but you have to sell them. You have to inform them. You have to feed them the propaganda, if you will. So then they can go talk and say, oh my gosh, Guy's doing so great. I just talked to him. We're getting on this platform. We're doing this. He made this sale. The pipeline's great. And he made 30 calls, just on Monday, and booked 6 meetings with these buyers. This is like, things are really happening, guys. It's really exciting. You know what I mean? That's what you want that person to absorb.
No, 100%. You're a reflection of them, and so if you're reflecting well, they're going to promote you. And the other thing you mentioned there about the target buyer, I always find that amazing, Guy, is that Yeah, still today, a lot of even well-established organizations still have, um, their ideal target customer isn't that well defined, or maybe has changed a little over time, but they haven't updated things to keep up with it. And I feel like sometimes people don't do enough work, or they keep it at a vague level because it feels more comfortable because you've got a bigger audience to address, as opposed to getting as granular as possible on who your ideal target customer really is.
Completely. I mean, that's the whole game, right? You're just wasting time if you truly don't know your targeted buyer, right? You're just wasting time. I mean, it truly makes no sense. And then all you're trying to do is build as big a list as possible of that targeted buyer, the person you're solving the biggest pain point, right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me why you would be chasing leads or opportunities where you know that you wouldn't know whether they would have an interest in your product.
Yeah, I often say that they used to call that the feel good funnel, is, where you pile a load of opportunities into the early stages of your pipeline because it makes you feel good, because it makes you feel good that there's lots in your pipeline, even though 50% of it is garbage. And that's why it's a funny process. I did this at a number of companies, and it's a funny process when you really, really clean your pipeline. It makes people very nervous, because they get used to this idea of, like, having a numerical multiplier or whatever it is, and like the bigger the pipeline, the better. But the reality is the more qualified the pipeline, the better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's that's why I said I just put 4 core principles, and
Mhm.
they're all, focus what matters most, right? That's the theme. And these are the things that I've outlined and put down onto paper that matter most. And all you have to do is follow it, right? And so it's very simple and easy to understand. Uh, Maybe the execution part is a little bit more, challenging, but it is a very simple process.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Guy, this has been great. All of Guy's information is going to be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people what you and Dakota do.
Sure. So what we do is number one, we have 2 businesses. One, we raise money for investment firms. So if you run an investment firm and you're looking for sales, fundraising advice, by all means, reach out to us at Dakota.com. And we also have a database business, and that database has a very large list of institutional investors globally, where, again, if you're in sales for an investment firm, we are the ideal database to be able to go in and quickly find, if you're traveling to Boston or New York or London, who the key investors are that you might want to meet with: family offices, RIAs, pension funds, et cetera. And all that contact information is in there. And if anybody wants a copy of my book signed, just email me, Gui, at Dakota.com, and I'd be happy to send you one.
Fantastic. Well, that's a great offer. I'd encourage people to check that out, and check out the work of Dakota. Well, listen, thanks again, Guy. Thank you for watching and listening. I'll see you all again very soon. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.